So about at 95, I called her from Long Beach and to her little her little apartment and in the facility, and she answered that very southern, lady, sweet voice. And, hello, and so we had a wonderful conversation. And as we went through, I thought, oh my God, she's totally back, right? She's here, she's present, and she was not vague at all. And so it was just kind of like delightful, and I was very happy to be kind of connecting with that personality. We called her Mama Nora. Everyone in the town called her Mama Nora, not just her family. And so at the end of the conversation, I said, well, it's time to go. I didn't want to tire her, and so I said, it's time to go. So I said, it's really wonderful talking with you. And she said, and it's so wonderful talking to you. And so I started to hang up. I was just ready to grab the phone. And she said, and by the way, I said, and then in her most ladylike manner, she said, to whom am I speaking? It was wonderful. And there was such freedom in that for me, right? Such freedom. I mean, because it was like, she was still who she was, right? But I was totally free. So I didn't have to be her little son or her whatever. It was like, I thought, how amazing, I thought, what an amazing thing. Maybe that would be the way you would feel around someone who has that experience of anatta. That they're not relating to you as like some connection to you, that you're chained to that, right? But you're just free to be whoever and whatever you are in their presence. I don't know that that's true. But it occurred to me because my reaction to that was very odd, rather than, oh, she doesn't know who I am. I mean, who would that be that says she doesn't know who I am, right? That would be, what would that be? Right, that would be a little boy. Or maybe a little bit older, but it would be, that would be like some story that I'm attached to, as opposed to, there's just like this charming experience of talking to this very, very sweet and lovely woman. So sometimes when I'm sitting and walking, and for instance, I remember I was thinking about something we need to do tomorrow, helping Travis pack up tomorrow. And I had that thought. So, the thought came through. This was not long ago, about 3 hours ago. So here's this thought. So he needs a couple of people to help him carry those damn screens. They weigh a ton. And then came this awareness of thinking, And so then it was almost like, man, right? I was kind of like putting it down right here. And then this other voice says, well, I have a right to think that. So then I thought, how interesting. So now I was in an argument with myself, right? Thinking this. And so I come back over and over to my mother's statement. To whom am I speaking? To whom are you speaking when you're thinking and talking to yourself? Who are you talking to? I ask myself that frequently. It's extremely helpful. It's extremely helpful. So John, you're around, and then you say, to whom am I speaking? And then what is this voice that comes? It's me. I'm the, So there is a level in which, and I say this. It's strange to say this because teachers say this. You hear them. I hear it frequently. But it is true, we're a little insane. We just really are. We just really are. There's a little insanity to that, right? I mean, to sit there. I mean, we talk to ourselves constantly. Well, I'm going to do this now. Here I am sitting, watching Victor. I'm sitting in there. We talk to ourselves constantly, and it seems totally. I do not entertain this illusion or this delusion that there's this entity, this solid thing inside my brain named Victor that is talking. It's like it's a conditioned reflex and a response that started when I was 2. And to some extent, because I was lonely, because we self-soothe by talking to ourselves, right? I do think that I think that's the primary reason we chatter in our mind, is that it wards off feelings of emptiness and loneliness. If you go silent you are stuck for a moment with something like an existential awareness of, I don't want to say emptiness, because emptiness is what the Buddhism would call it, but it's a very deceptive. But I mean, in other words, don't fool yourself to think that we're interested in being silent. That which is chattering is terrified of silence. It's terrified of it. Because it's like it opens up a whole world that is new and can be very frightening. And to certainly, if Jane goes on an 11-month retreat, it's going to come. I mean, you're going to have those moments where the mind is going to stop, and then there's a gap. Who am I in that gap? Who am I when there's no thought? It can be incredibly freeing, and it can be terrifying. So, I think that, look back, and thank you for that question, because I think it's wonderful. It's great. We insist in a way, right? That's the way we get around. That we get away with this chatter, talking to ourselves, right? That's the way we do it. We insist that there's someone in there who's talking, and we're relating to them. But it goes beyond that. I will start imagining Lynn, and then I'll have a conversation with her, right? Right. I mean, I can imagine like Nita or to Travis, and so I need to, Travis and I have something to talk about, and so I'll just then Travis, Travis will be this internal image, and then we're having a conversation. Well, I think maybe, and it seems totally real. It's totally real. I mean, and if you want to sort of like expose yourself, so like, how many people are, and really I mean this, how many people are willing to stick a microphone in your ear and walk around and let people hear the chatter in your head? Raise your hand if you're willing to do that. Raise your hand if you're willing to let everyone in this room hear the crap that's going on in that brain. And if you're laughing, in other words, if you're not willing to do that, what does that tell you? See, it tells you something extraordinarily important. It's a secret, right? We're carrying a secret around. The secret is, that I have me and then I have myself, and we have a very lovely relationship, right? It's basically a verbal relationship. And that's a very sad thing, that it's basically a verbal relationship. It's not a feeling relationship. Meaning, if it were a feeling relationship, you remember when we were reading the thing about the Buddha, it said he heard his own sound, right? That does not mean that he heard a voice, but in other words, in theory, we can connect to something profound and deep inside that is real. Jung said, I never saw a purple cow. I hope I never see one. But I can tell you this right now, I'd rather see than be one. I don't think he said that. He said, this is really brilliant. You all know I kind of think he's brilliant. Here she comes. I can't believe it. Although the mind cannot apprehend its own form or existence. Now really get this. Although the mind cannot apprehend its own form or existence, owing to the lack of an Archimedean point outside, it nevertheless exists. I really love that. So, and really, it's a little bit of a push against the Eastern model, the Buddhist model. He says it nevertheless exists. Then he says, not only does the psyche exist, it is existence itself. Really profound. To experience that existence, the existence of what we are, we have to be totally still.
Could you read it again?
I beg your pardon?
Could you read it again, please?
Yes. Sure. I'm just kind of looking at all this stuff. I haven't even gotten into the Dharma. I mean, meaning that I'm not really even close to where I wanted to go. So quit interrupting me. This is really I like this a lot. This is from his Lectures on Religion in 1937. Although the mind cannot apprehend its own form or existence. And have you ever seen your mind? It's just think about it. I mean, he said one time, he said the problem, is that the organ the organ that apprehends the mind is the mind itself. That's our conundrum. You could argue that mindfulness is the closest that we come to apprehending the mind. And actually, more than one, Shinzen Young once referred to mindfulness as that Archimedean point. You know what he means by that, right? The Archimedean, he said, you give me a place of, to put the pulley and then I could lift the world. Meaning that, right, I mean, in theory, if you can stand outside, right, with a pulley, you could lift anything up. So this is what Jung is saying, why it's so totally brilliant. He says, although the mind cannot apprehend its own form or existence, and it cannot, owing to the lack of an Archimedean point outside. And kids, no matter how wonderful mindfulness is, it ain't no Archimedean point outside. It just isn't. It's a clever thing, but it is not. There's nothing that can get you outside of yourself. Nothing. And so that's the conundrum of being a human being with this extraordinary nervous system that we have. Because we can almost intuit something, that is outside, but we can't really quite get there except by perhaps those extraordinary states of samadhi that the Buddha talked about. Although the mind cannot apprehend its own form or existence owing to the lack of an Archimedean point outside you, he says it nevertheless exists. He asserts, in other words, that there is something called a mind that exists. And it's a no-brainer if you think, hello. Not only does the psyche exist, it is existence itself. So, when the Buddha turns around and says, it is your mind that creates the world, that's what he means. So I wanted to share with you. This is a fascinating thing. I've been, as some of you know, not a lot of you, but some of you who kind of regularly come to that place called Long Beach Meditation. Well, I've been enamored of this very enamored of this extraordinary monk named Nanavira, who was British in the British intelligence in World War II, and part of what I love about him, and he died rather tragically, quite young, in his 40s, but he was. He would have, had he not been a Buddhist monk, he would have been a philosopher. And so he studies, he writes about Sartre, about Heidegger, Kierkegaard, all of the great philosophers. And he actually sees a great, that he says if you're going to start somewhere before you hit Buddhism, he believed that existential philosophy was the way to start. That the existential philosophers were really working towards the great questions of what is existence, what is being, what is real, and certainly what is the self. But he had this term, and he uses it quite frequently, and so I'm going to just share that with you, this will get me into this little, what I'm talking about the conundrum of the no self. He uses the term, and it's a Buddhist term, putajana. and it means really almost literally commoner. The other way would be worldling. A worldling is the Puthajana. So there's a sort of an elitist aspect to Buddhism, at least early Buddhism. The whole concept of Aryan. Hitler was very attracted to that, by the way, right? I mean, he was very fascinated with the Buddhists because of that Aryan. And I kind of think that's where the swastika, the reverse of it is a Buddhist symbol. But they reversed it in the Germans did. But that whole concept of the Aryan race, right? The Four Noble Truths are, the word noble is Aryan, right, in Sanskrit. Right? I mean, Aryan. And so the noble truths are, whatever, Arya, I don't know. Dukkha, that would be the first one. So there is this idea that people who have joined the lineage of the I almost want to say the elite, they're no longer commoners. Now, I don't want you to get into this thing of, let's not get into, the idea of getting upset about those words, because I don't think that they're not meant really pejoratively, although to us, at this, by 2015, in the political correctness run amok throughout the world, right? I mean, we're going to take it. What do they mean, commoner? What do they mean? We hate that. But I don't think that's really what it would have been back, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. I don't know. But Nanavira points out, and this is quite. So I wanted to share this. So we talked about the 3 types of this and the 4 types of that, but this is really great. There's the Buddha says to us that we suffer because we cling, right? We suffer because we cling. And is there anybody, so if I had been clinging to this, I told a story about Mama Nora Jane, you missed it, it was really good. If I'd been clinging to this, I explained to everyone you had time issues, by the way. So if, and by the way, may I interrupt myself? Do I have your permission to interrupt myself? I forgot to let you know that the person, I told you that I was very unhappy because someone's car broke down and then they were not able to get here. They had to be towed back to Long Beach. And so Rosa Maria got here. She managed to get here anyway. So I'm so happy. It made me very happy. And you missed some wonderful Dharma talks. So anyway, I am delighted that she made it. Now, where was I? So this is a very famous passage, and it's so famous I can't remember it. But the Buddha, one of the core things that he said is that so we suffer because this voice that David wants to pretend is he wants to make it real. I'm just joking. Not really. It says, this is mine. This belongs to me. This child, my child, it belongs to me. That's very hard, right? My parents, my mother, my mama Nora belongs to me. I was saying that I was talking to her on the phone, and we ended the phone, and she said, and to whom am I speaking? So I'm inviting people to ask themselves that as we walk around and we hear a little voice. Just suddenly stop and say, Mary, we're thinking about, right? Minneapolis. To whom am I speaking? So the Buddha says that the most problems that you have, and I have, I don't know if you've got a problem beyond this, is that we look at something and it's mine. Really, you could look at a tree and it could be mine, in a sense, grasping, in a sense. Everything that you see and you want or you don't want, that's a form of grasping. Every sound that you hear, right? When the thing goes up, boom, 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 right? You don't want it. But I mean, so this is, the word is upadana. Upadana is the 5 grasping aggregates. Those are like just core stuff, kids. I'm having too much fun, but never mind. There's this grasping part of us. Most of us in the room have it. Nicholas doesn't, but everybody else. We grasp. What is it you don't grasp for? I mean, really think about it. I mean, because it's like it's conditioned in the brain to, I want that. I need that. And so the Buddha says that thought is the beginning of suffering. I am that. I own that. That is mine. It's stated in many different ways. And so Nanavira says this is by definition the mindset of the Puthajjana, the worldling. Okay? The worldling is a being that is absolutely caught in the net of the 5 grasping aggregates. The five things that make us grasp. Feeling, thinking, all of those, actually it's feeling, perception, formations. I love formations. Formations is the best way to think about formations is just every story you tell yourself. It's a formation. Like we constantly tell ourselves a story. We're all storytellers, right? We should be published as John is. Okay, so a Puthajjana is the reason why in Buddhism that would be called a worldling, which is not a bad thing. You're a bad person, but it means that we look at something and say, I am that, or I want that, I need that, that is me. I am my body. I am my body. Anybody think they're their body? That's a very losing situation. It's a very serious proposition. It's like when you're like 35 or 20, when you're Travis's age, it's fine to say I'm my body. It can be kind of unpleasant at times, right? But it's just fine. But when you're 73, it's not a good situation. Believe you me, it's not a good situation. Because when you're 73, you start thinking, I am my body. So it's not good. So then you say, okay, I'm not my body, I'm my mind. That's much better, right? Of course, what happens to your mind when you lose your body? That could be bad too. And of course, the Buddha said, at least the body lasts for 70 or 80 years. The mind doesn't last for over a second, which is true. So that's grasping. That's the Puthajjana. We grasp. That's the first person. There are only 3. There are only 3. The next person, and this is wonderful. This is amazing. It really is. The next person is someone who says, I know that I do not own that. I know that I don't own this. I don't own this. This is someone who is elevated on the path, right? They recognize that, that it is that is a delusion to say, I am that. I am that. I am not that. I am my body. I am my feelings. I am my, or my child belongs to me. My lover belongs to me. How many people have romantic relationships where they do not think, where they're not a little codependent? What is codependency if it's not, this is mine? It's what it is. So you've got 2 people equally saying, this is mine, this is mine. That's so anyway, but that would be your Puthajjana. But if you have had experiences so that you're no longer what is called a Puthajjana, and I think the word is Seka, but don't hold me to that. but it's someone who has experienced some insights in Buddhism, and they now realize that that's a delusion. Okay? That's the second person. They realize the idea that this is mine, they realize that that's not real. What's the third person? Because there's a third person. And the third person, the word for it is arhat. The actual meaning of that is saint. And really a Buddha was an arhat. I mean, an arhat is the final level. Jane and I have reached that recently. That's not funny. So there's the one that says, this is mine. I need this, right? This is my lover, my child, my parent, my car, whatever. This is mine. The person who has experienced Buddhist insight says, I know that's not real. That's not true. This doesn't belong to me. Maybe it feels like it does, but I know that it's not real. What would the arhat say? Nalagura says they don't have the thought. It doesn't occur to them. Do you understand? It doesn't occur to them. They don't look at something and say, this is mine. That's a being who is what we would call experiencing the absence of self, whatever that means, right? Does that mean they no longer exist? No, of course not. See, it doesn't, right? But it does mean that they are no longer in any way contained in that grasping self that says, this is mine. And so, can you think of something that would indicate more freedom than that? I can't. I cannot imagine anything that would even approximate freedom on the level of that, of a being that does not grasp, does not say this is mine or I need it. So I invite you as you go through the next 3 days of our retreat. Sunday, Monday. Number one, it's very helpful when you have a thought, if mindfulness can pop in, it's kind of helpful to say, to whom am I speaking? And then don't get into then you can say, well, who is that who said to whom? You could, there could be infinite regress, but we're not worried. But I mean, to just sort of look at that, I mean, to start recognizing that there's something in there that needs to convince itself that it's real, and it grasps. And the truth is, it causes suffering. Whether and if you experience the reality of that it causes suffering, you're way ahead of the truth, because the majority do not experience it as suffering, right? The majority of us, it's no, I love to watch monkeys. I've always adored monkeys. I love monkeys. They're wonderful. And, and you can just see them, and they're just grasping anything they can get their hands on, right, from a banana on. And they don't think they're suffering at all. Well, and so in some extent they're oblivious to suffering. And but you can look at little monkeys or lichen and say, we're pretty close. We're pretty close. We have the capacity to see that we're suffering. It's extraordinary. We have the capacity to see that. They don't. If you don't see that the grasping mind creates a dissonance, a tension, right, that it never ends, if you don't experience that, why the hell would you go through all of this, what we're going through, right? To start to look at it and to release from it, from that grasping. The Upadana is the 5 grasping aggregates. They are the core part that creates this sense of a self that is not anything but an accumulation of memory. And you see, we're so terrified of saying, oh, well, if I'm not that, then who am I, right? So, I mean, it's like the idea of letting that go seems like, oh my God, then I would be just emptiness, a void. I would disappear, I suppose. But, you know, to experience the truth of that you're not those grasping things, you won't vanish. You know, like so we're sitting in the room right now, all of a sudden Norman just vanishes, right? Everyone starts to vanish. It's like the rapture in Christianity, right? Everyone just goes to heaven, right? I shouldn't do that, of course. Well, we're in a Christian environment. But, you're not going to vanish. You're just simply going to be free.